On this episode of Locked On Lightning, Nikita Kucherov has become the fifth player to get 100 assists in an NHL season. We talk about that and more on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Danker. Just want to welcome you all to Locked On Lightning. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. On this episode, we are talking about, obviously, the big news from tonight's game. Not only the Lightning pick up a win in Game 82, but Nikita Kucherov collects his 100th assist of the season, becoming the fifth player ever to record 100 assists in an NHL season. And let me list off the other players, because so you all know where I'm going with this. Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Bobby Orr, and Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid, as we all know, having a phenomenal season, but missed some time here and there throughout the course of the season. So really, is he really in the conversation for the Hart? No. The other guy that I'm referring to, Nathan MacKinnon, not in that conversation. Had some very good stretches this year. I think that, and I've said this before, Kuch gets 100 assists. That should be a slam dunk for him winning the Hart this year. We've talked about it at length on this show, how he has had a huge influence on where this team has been in the standings throughout the course of the season. Really early on was the sole reason as to why the Lightning were able to kind of stay in the thick of things. I think we could all agree, and I'm sure this will be a topic of debate, whether or not he ends up winning this award. But one could make the argument that if you don't have 86 playing the way he is playing, then most likely in those first 2 months of the season, the Lightning are at the bottom of the barrel. Yes, there was times when they still were, but with everything that was going on, you go from no Vasilevsky to Vasilevsky not playing well. The rest of the team looks like they're in complete disarray. 86 is just plugging all the leaks. And now he has capped off that season, this phenomenal season, 44 goals and 100 assists, breaking all kinds of franchise records, and becoming the first Russian-born player to have 100 assists, and pretty much, becoming the first in a lot of categories, I'm sure, for Russian players as well. But I mean, what more can you say? I've said this line over and over this season. What more needs to be brought to the table in accolades for this Lightning team in order for 86 to get his flowers? Seriously, for those of you that are listening on our YouTube channel, please let me know in the comments what more needs to be said. What needs to be done? What did he need to do? Score 69 goals, 70 goals? It was the only way he could have possibly convinced everyone without a shadow of a doubt that he should have been the MVP by having a Gretzky-like season? Was that the only way? Because we know when the MVP awards come out, when the voting comes out, there'll be votes, obviously, for Nathan MacKinnon. There'll be votes, of course, for Nikita Kucherov. And I think the more blasphemous thing, and this kind of just shows me where some of the hockey media is. And I think I don't know if it was actually tonight on TNT or maybe it was somewhere else. I know Biz made a comment about Crosby possibly being one of the Selke Trophy candidates, which is that's not. But you look at I've looked. I think I heard somewhere else where someone actually legitimately tried to make a case of Crosby being in the Hart Trophy conversation. I also saw on another social. I saw on X tonight. There was a post from a hockey analytics site that they based off of statistics, which I don't understand this, why people love to hate on Kucherov. And now this came from Evolving Wild. I guess that's some sort of a hockey analytics page or something like that. But based off of statistics, I'm not a big hockey analytics kind of person, so I don't know what GAR and XGAR metrics is. But according to that, Kucherov shouldn't even be in the Hart Trophy conversation, which is absolutely ridiculous. So that takes away all credibility as to what this page is. But you see it everywhere. I mean, the guy has basically held up this Lightning team, pushed them along the way in what was a very, very competitive Atlantic Division this year. I mean, I'll give credit when credit is due. Even the Maple Leafs played phenomenal this year. And but at the end of the day, we're not talking about individual. We're not talking about teams. We're talking about individuals. And this was an incredible season. This was one of the most incredible individual seasons I have seen outside of Connor McDavid in quite some time. And the fact that we were able to watch that on a nightly basis, a lot of Lightning fans should be very privileged and grateful that they were able to see that. And not many fans from other fan bases have really get a chance to see something like this. We saw history. We saw outside of probably in the last 20 years, I would say probably one of the best NHL seasons we have seen. Definitely in the 2000s. 100% in the last 10 years. Now, as to whether this makes him a sure shot across the board, I mean, I can't sit here and speculate as to what really is going through writers' minds. But when the chips fall where they may, I think we could all agree that if the Hart Trophy winner is Nikita Kucherov, it will definitely be robbed. But phenomenal season, phenomenal player, and it's not over yet. I mean, I'm sure if you ask Kuch, he would prefer a Stanley Cup over a Hart Trophy. So we'll keep our eye on that and talk about that towards the end of the show, as we could finally say that we are playoff ready, as the Lightning will be facing off against the Panthers this Sunday. So coming up in just a little bit, we'll be taking a look back on the regular season, a brief, I guess, not too or way too early recap or reflection on this past season, the 2023-24 NHL season for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about our first sponsor on today's show, and that is our friends over at Game Time. Now, you've heard me talk about this app before, But Game Time is one of those apps that really truly makes your life a hell of a lot easier, because you're going to an event, you just got out of work, or you say, you know what, let's go to a game tonight. Well, you look on Game Time, and boom, they got the tickets not only that you want, but for the prices that you could afford. And guess what? Now, with baseball season in full swing, Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. One of my favorite things that I love to see on this app, and definitely use, is the seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. You also get the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So go to the Game Time app right now, because, I mean, the clock is ticking on your awesome deals waiting for you. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So as always, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Go ahead, subscribe to our channel there. Comment below this video. What was your favorite moment from the season? I think a lot of you will comment on Nikita Kucherov's 100 career assists, 100 assist of the season. And man, this season was just probably one of the more fun ones, I have to say, believe it or not. If you go back and listen to some of the episodes, it may not sound that I'm having much of fun at all talking about certain Lightning games, but it really was. So the Lightning finished the season 45, 29, and 8. That's with 98 points. The goal differential is plus 23. Their home record is 25, 11, and 5. Their away record is 20, 18, and 3. Their shootout record is 3-1, and they finished the season with a 5-4-1 record on their last 10 games. Obviously, the best part of that is getting that last win in Game 82. And the reason why I say this season was probably one of my favorites is because, and I've kind of said, I've alluded to past Lightning seasons before. I spoke about recently over the last couple of weeks about how well the Lightning were playing before, obviously, they had this 3-game losing streak. And I spoke about how they were playing well because, especially with Vasilevsky and as well as this team, I haven't seen the Lightning this laser focused, this disciplined, playing at this level that we have seen them play over the last month or so. Since really, I think we could say, I mean, you could take your pick. It could be either one of the back-to-back Cup years, to be honest. And that was something that I really loved to see out of this team, and something that we really needed to see out of this team. But the thing that also kind of stuck out to me with this team is that we kind of saw from them, I believe, in the bubble. We could go back that far, is that really how the character development of this team. And I say that because in both those years, I mean, really more so the playoff run in the bubble up in Canada, and then also this regular season, those were both instances where this team, even though they had in both instances, they had to learn to play with each other over the course of that stretch. Obviously, an 82-game season is in many ways a lot different than a Stanley Cup run in another country in a neutral site, isolated off pretty much from the entire world, other than, phone, text, FaceTime, all that stuff, and your teammates. But I bring up the comparison because not only that is that in both those years, obviously the pandemic year, the Lightning get Coleman, they get Goodrow, Bogosian as well. And they really only had about maybe a couple of weeks to play with those guys. Plus, you add the whole Steven Stamkos injury issue. And also going into the pandemic, the Lightning were rolling. And they also had a couple of, rough games before that. And then, boom, I think it was so they ended in March. They ended up coming back, I believe it was May, June, maybe. So 3 months, let's say. And obviously that's a little different, but with this Lightning season, you had a little bit of more of a turnover. It was kind of the same thing in terms of that you're not playing you don't have Vasilevsky for the first 2 months. You really don't know what you're going to get out of Jonas Johansson. Guys just were not playing well. So you could kind of really say that you were kind of without your good players. Your defense was just absolutely atrocious. You had, Hayden Fleury, who you didn't really know what you were going to get out of him. Connor Sheary, who comes in, you kind of were hoping that you were going to get some scoring out of him, which we saw towards the later part of the season. Was playing atrocious. Dahan was all right. Let's not say that he was phenomenal. I mean, let's say he was serviceable for a third line defenseman. Matt Tompkins, who played tonight, you didn't really expect big things out of him. Tyler Mock comes in. You kind of figured you were going to see something from him that was going to allow you to just, I don't know, play at a reasonable level. Nick Pervix was just atrocious. You basically, and Tanner Jeannot as well. I mean, you were expecting some bigger things out of him this year, and obviously we didn't see that, but really, the point is what I'm getting to in both instances is that this team, just like in 1920, had to learn how to find ways to win and how to mature and how to rely on each other to where you didn't have the same 3-4 guys trying to win the game for you on a nightly basis. And in both instances so far, especially this year, obviously one resulted in a Stanley Cup. The other were still obviously very a ways away from even having that discussion as to where this team ends up. But you could tell thus far from the last couple of weeks, especially in the month of March, that the team has that chemistry. Everybody's coming together. Andre Vasilevsky played phenomenal. I mean, I can't really expect much more out of him. And I will admit when I was wrong. I was the first one to think that, well, you know what? I didn't think that version of Vasilevsky was there anymore. I just kind of figured we were going to get a mediocre goaltender. And for really, to be honest, for the good part of the season, that's what we got. And then you jump into March, and slowly but surely you start to see him crack through whatever shell it was that he was in. And so basically, this team kind of, for lack of a better way to say it, when you look at Vasilevsky, when you look at Connor Sheary, when you look at Steven Stamkos, because, he put up the numbers, and we could always rely to a certain degree to see this guy put up numbers, but it's it's one thing if you're putting up empty stats, where really this guy scored a lot of big goals down the stretch. And, you know, I sit here on April 17th, right after game 82 of the NHL season has concluded, and I will say that I was wrong. I was wrong to jump the gun on Stamkos. I was wrong to, warranted at the time, but now looking back, obviously, I was wrong, to discount out Vasilevsky. And along the lines of this team trying to find their identity, you got phenomenal performances from Anthony Cirelli. Nick Paul has just been having an incredible season where, if this team wasn't so stacked up top on their top six, the conversation could very well be made that Nick Paul should be on that first line. You have Mikey Esamont having, I think we could agree, a breakout season. Anthony Duclair has been really a godsend since the trade deadline. Brandon Hagel is 100% going to be part of the second generation of great Lightning players. And you have a good supporting cast on this team, even guys that have not played as much as you would have liked them to. Emil Martinson Lilleberg, in the very small chances that he has had this season, how do you not play this guy on a regular basis in the playoffs? The guy has really, in his moments, has really impressed me. And that's something you really need if you're a scrappy Lightning team, which, listen, I know everybody is scared of this Lightning team in the playoffs. I know a lot of fans of a lot of opposing teams that did not want to play the Lightning in the first round. And that may be true. The big bad Lightning may very well seem like they're back. But make no mistake about it, this is a very scrappy Lightning team. Behind all that glitz and that glamour of those top six scorers, the Duclairs, the Points, the Kuch, the Stamkoses, the Cirellis, Paul, you could add him in there. This is a scrappy team that, just like every other team that's going into the playoffs, is going to try their damn hardest to show why they belong. And it really all started in March. If we're going to look back on this season as to where the flip switched, it was March. It was that 2-game stretch where the Lightning ran roughshod through some of the best teams in the league. And my favorite moment, real quick, from this regular season was 100% tonight, when Nikita Kucherov collected his 100th assist of the season on a Braydon Point goal, no doubt. No one else could have drawn it up even better. The only other outcome or result of that would have been a one-timer to Stamkos. So let me know. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know on social media, LO_Lightning on Twitter, as well as LockedOn_Lightning on Instagram. Follow me at DankyDank, DenkyDeank. Let me know whether it be on my social media page, the show's social media page, underneath this video on YouTube. Let me know your favorite moment of the season. Like I said, I expect a bunch of Kucherov 100 assist statements as the number one moment of the season. So coming up in just a little bit, we're playoff ready here on Locked On Lightning. They have announced the times. They announced the dates, at least for game 1. That's all I care about thus far. We talk about 2 early predictions. We're going to have a crossover episode with Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers later on in the week, so tune in for that. But we're going to be talking about everything playoffs real quick to wrap things up. But before we get into that, I want to talk about our last sponsor on today's show, and that is our friends over at Monopoly Go. Now, I've been told I'm a competitive person. 100%. I am. I mean, it doesn't matter whether I'm out playing roller hockey, whether I'm playing checkers with my 7-year-old nephew. I am competitive. I have a competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I could charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, and the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in on the game and join friends. Download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. So one last time, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel there. Hit that thumbs up button so it could help the show reach new listeners and viewers. So the regular season's over. The regular season's over. It was a phenomenal season. Would have liked to have get that 100-point mark, though. You know, that's always like a nice number. You always want to always like having those kind of numbers. But we look forward to the playoffs this weekend. It's going to be game 1 against the Florida Panthers, and it's going to be a 12:30 game. Kind of would have preferred it to be a little later, but beggars can't be choosers. And it's one of those things. If you've been listening to the podcast for a few years now, you know that I have a very good friendship with Locked On Panthers host Armando Velez. It's going to be a phenomenal stretch of coverage that we will all be participating in here on Locked On Lightning, and I can't wait. I can't wait to sit down with Armando and record our crossover for this upcoming series. And it's one of those things where I said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'm happy that the chips fell where they did. I spoke about it last night that if the Lightning were to play Boston, they play Boston. That's what you can't really control at that point. Florida ended up winning, won the division, and now they get to play the Lightning. And I think that, yeah, that's a little bit. I saw a comment or two on yesterday's episode. People were kind of upset about playing Florida, which I get. You know, they're a very good team. They're a very physical team. You know, they're not the team that the Lightning swept in the second round while they were, the year they went to the Stanley Cup final and lost to Colorado. But you know what? Sometimes you got to beat the best to be the best. I know that sounds super cliche, but it's 100% true. I think that, that series, a potential series, which, the Lightning, if they were to win this series, it's only going to make them better. You look at the rest of the East, like I said on last night's episode, and I'll keep saying this until I'm proven wrong. I really look at the rest of the East, and there's, Florida is a formidable team, but I'm not scared of them, and I don't think any Lightning fan should. Okay? This is a team, they're not the 40s Red Wings. They're not the 80s Oilers, okay? They're not the early 2000s Devils, okay? We're not facing a dynasty here. We're facing a team that lost in 5 in the Stanley Cup final last year, okay? And you could reference it all you want and say, well, the Lightning didn't do particularly well against Florida during the regular season, which, yeah, I mean, you could use as an excuse or as a reason. And the Lightning were 1-2 this year, being outscored 15-9 against the Florida Panthers. I mean, that's not that bad. I know that's not a good case, but like I said, we're not the Lightning aren't playing the President's Trophy winner, who are the Rangers, who I don't fear either. The Lightning could be anybody, okay? They could be anybody in the Eastern Conference. And the only thing that is going to stand in their way of winning hockey games and advancing to the next series is themselves. And that's really what it comes down to it. If the Lightning go out and they play the way that we saw them play in March, they could very well go back to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that should be the minimum goal for all Lightning fans when they're asked, or when they're thinking about how far they want this team to go or how far they think this team should go. And the expectation should be Eastern Conference Final or bust. And then after that, you're really playing with house money, because it's an expectation once you get to the Eastern Conference Final that you're really just on a roll at that point, and whatever else happens. And it's really what it comes down to. I mean, if we get, I would say, if we get about 75% of what we saw out of Vasilevsky over the last month, Lightning should win this series. And that goes for every player on this team. If we see 75% of what we saw from every player on this team, as well as the supporting cast players, like the Lillebergs that I spoke about before, who I really expect to see him play quite a bit in this playoff series. It's not only going to be an exciting series, it's going to be a great series, and it's going to be a series that is won by the Lightning. And I think that the Panthers, and we'll hear more about this from Armando when we have him on and we do our crossover, I would be 100% implored to guess that he's going to say that the Panthers need to win this series fast. Because as everyone knows, and we saw it last year in the Leaf series, in which they were letting the Lightning in stay in that one, the longer the Lightning hang around, the better they get. And I think that's just the hockey. That's the hockey, really the mantra in the playoffs. So let me know in the comments. I mean, it's exciting. We're going to be talking about a lot of playoff hockey over the next couple of days. We're going to be talking about a lot of the things that happened this season. Obviously, a lot of Nikita Kucherov talk. We're going to talk about it all. And it's all going to be here on Locked On Lightning. So make sure to go ahead, subscribe, hit the notification button if you're listening to us on an app-based streaming service, whether that be iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, wherever. Go ahead, hit that notification button. So we'll be back tomorrow to talk more Lightning hockey, so tune in then. So that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.